Good morning and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspects. I hope you're having a wonderful morning. It's about 35 minutes past the hour of 10 a.m. that we are coming to you live this morning in the aftermath of the finals of the UEFA Conference League, and Chelsea are champions. So really, it's been quite painstakingly, but they are champions. I know it's been a sour sort of a grape of bitter pill to swallow for Arsenal fans across the world, and more importantly in the UK. But it is what it is. Chelsea are champions, and you cannot take away you cannot take that away from them. And you know, really, so guys, I'm waiting for many of you to join us so that we can get started in today's conversations. Really, we'll be talking about those comments made by Thierry Comments while appearing on the Overlap podcast that he made about Arsenal. So we'll be looking at that, and then the reaction from that Chelsea victory, as well as any other news. Of course, there's been reaction to the triumphs of Chelsea. There's been reaction to Arsenal closing in on Martin Zubimendi, and we're going to be having that talk briefly. I've seen some sort of a shallow debate really about that news. And I'll give you my opinion and why I think some of the arguments that have been leveled in that respect of the transfer in itself have been shallow, or have appeared to be shallow in my own opinion. So allow me to test our audience and let's get down into the conversation this morning, because it's quite interesting. It's quite interesting, but I do believe by all accounts and measures that the debate is shallow, the way in which some people have tried to, level it. I think our audios are good. I think we're good to go. So, good morning, everyone. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect, coming to you live from Kampala, Uganda. Please consider liking the broadcast if you're just joining us, but also consider subscribing to the channel. If you're new here, both buttons, if you're using a mobile phone or computer, should be somewhere along the same line. Just click the like button and then the subscribe button if you're new here, and support what we do here at Football Tribe, where we say it's for the fans, by the fans, in as far as football is concerned. So this morning, we are looking at Chelsea's triumph in the UEFA Conference League, as well as those comments made by Thierry Comments in regards to where he thinks Arsenal should be at the moment in their project with Mikel Arteta, that among other things. So, without wasting any further ado, I will kick things off in Poland, where the final was. Rip Sukuna is here, back with us. Hi, bro. Good morning. Nice to have you back. It's always a pleasure to have you. So, thank you, man, for the love and support there. Really appreciate it. So like I was saying, the game in itself, Chelsea had to come from a goal down to win it by 4-1. And as soon as they went 2-1 up, thanks to Nicholas Jackson, I sort of just got that feeling that what was bound to happen was quite similar to what we had seen in Baku, Azerbaijan, back in 2019, when they humiliated Arsenal, beating them by 4-1. Pedro on target for that one, a burst from Eden Hazard, and I seem to forget, was it Cesar Azpilicueta who scored the other goal for Chelsea, and Alex Iwobi scoring, the only consolation for that Arsenal side. So yesterday it was sort of not in the whole context of the game, but it was a bit of a similar story in terms of the scoreline. In the first half, Chelsea did dominate possession, as we did witness, about up to 68% in comparison to Real Betis' 32%. But again, they both, I think they ended with about 2 shots on target. That's for Real Betis as compared to Chelsea's only one. And Real Betis were really pressing Chelsea high up the pitch. They were winning their balls back. Ishiko was really impacting the game really in a positive manner and doing everything right. Chelsea were struggling to find their foot in the game, even though they had majority of the possession. Cole Palmer there did struggle in the first half. Malo Gusto was failing at the task he had been handed. It felt like he was lost in the game. Bernard Badiashile, I thought, did struggle a bit on his defensive duties. My mom says hi. Hi, my mom. Good morning. Good to have you. I think I'm seeing you here for the first time. Kindly do me the absolute favor and click on that like button for this broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for being with us this morning. Lovely to have you on the channel and join the community. So, like I was saying, those players sort of struggled. It's the first half. You felt that Chelsea's front runners in Cole Palmer, Noni Madueke, Pedro himself, they sort of struggled. And at halftime, when we were doing the halftime review, I did make the suggestion that if they needed to get their fortunes better, they needed to make some changes. Thank you so much, my mom, for subscribing to the channel. Much appreciated, really. So, like I was saying, in some of our recommendations, I remember saying that Chelsea needed to take out Malo Gusto and replace him with Richard James because he knew too well how to play right back and also being that inverting right back, because predominantly, especially in the later stages of the competition, he had been played in midfield. So he would pull that off well. And then the other recommendation was a substitution for one of the centre backs. And it was Levi Colwill that came on later in the place of Bernard Badiashile. But also we did recommend that either Pedro or Noni Madueke be taken off. And it was Pedro that was sacrificed. Although at halftime, my suggestion was really pointing to the realm of more to the realm of Noni Madueke, who I thought did a struggle in the game, especially to get ahead. My mom says this is my mom's account. Okay, it's all good, but thank you for the love and support. Much appreciated. So in that kind of spirit, and of course, Chelsea had already fallen to a first half goal in as early as the 9th minute. That goal scored by Abed Ezauzori. Yes. Forgive the mispronunciation, but that's the name. Ezauzori. That's Abed who scored that goal. Quite a brilliant take with Isiko Alcoran providing the assist. But then they did miss a chance. Mark Butler forcing Philippe Yegunson into a save in that same first half. And then they had another golden opportunity that fell to the same goal scorer. And he could not bury that chance. And I got to go. It's okay. Thank you so much for the short stint you've been with us, my mom. It was a pleasure having you on the broadcast. So, like I was saying, for that short start, for that missed opportunity, you sort of felt that it would perhaps come back to bite them later on in the game. Because when you do not take your chances in a final where you're not even dominating play, but at least you've been able to sort of create the kind of chances that Real Betis had been able to create in that first half, you've got to take them. You've got to be clinical. Then there was another opportunity missed by Cedric Bakambu. Hi, Rachel Kodla. Good to have you back. Good morning and welcome back to the channel. I don't know what country you're joining us from, so I would struggle to tell what time it is, but it's good to have you back once again, Rachel. Pleasure to have you. So Cedric Bakambu missed that sort of half a chance, kind of, was because he missed getting to the ball, and then he looked at the back of him and was shouting to Anthony, trying to call him, and it's like, why did you close in? Come, follow up quickly in the area and try to get to the ball. But Anthony had not done that. Anthony was the other player that was struggling to get back, into the game. My mom says, hi, I'm back. Good to have you back, my mom. Kindly let me know what country you're joining us from, because for us, we are streaming to you live from Kampala, Uganda. And Rachel, kindly let me know where you're joining us from, Rachel. Good to have you once again on the channel. So you sort of felt that Anthony did really struggle to get his footing in the game, and in the second half was no different, because it continued to be that way, because then Chelsea then continued to dominate play, and there came their equalizer through Cole Palmer providing that brilliant assist of a sublime cross to excuse me, to Enzo Fernandez. And for both goals, because it was only 5 minutes apart between the equalizer by Enzo Fernandez and the goal that pushed Chelsea ahead through Nicolas Jackson, with Cole Palmer providing the assists, both being floated and both being the other being a headed goal, and I think Nicolas Jackson's goal was probably a shoulder or chested. It didn't really appear like he had gotten his full head to it. Anyways, so in that moment, you felt that the Real Betis defense of Mark Bartra and Nathan really struggled to contend with, Chelsea's overflow of play and the kinds of chances they were creating in that moment. They struggled to defend against that. And once Chelsea got that 2-1 lead, it simply energized them to go ahead further. And before they could score their third goal, they got Real Betis on the counter, and Jadon Sancho again, who had come on in place of Pedro Neto, I think, giving Nicolas Jackson the pass to head to the counter. It was a brilliant counter-attack, but then that final pass, Nicolas Jackson kind of overplayed it. The weight to that ball was a little too much, and it, of course, went away out of control, and Adrian was able to, take receivership of that ball, and they missed that opportunity. But still, you sort of felt that Chelsea had the game by both horns. They really were the stronger team. They had the confidence now that they were leading by 2-1. It felt like they had clicked, everything had suddenly clicked back into play. Cole Palmer was regularly getting on the ball and making his turnovers, gliding through the midfield and the defense, and then I think for the third goal, for which Kenan Brisbane Hall provides the assist in the 83rd minute, the way he was left to stroll through that midfield, like he was taking a leisure walk, really, in a sense. And, he wanted to provide that. Jadon Sancho, who in what is termed to be his last dance with Chelsea, calmly took it to score to make it a 3-1 on the night. And then in stoppage time, added time, after 90 minutes, that's in the 91st minute, arguably one of the best players on the pitch on the day in Moises Caicedo stood tall with his, tinted hair and his face mask on, nose mask on, really scored a brilliant strike to make it 4-1 on the night. Enzo Fernandez providing the assist. Of course, Cole Palmer was given the man of the match award for sort of his double contribution for those two goals, the equalizer and then the goal that gets Chelsea ahead in the first place. But for me, overall, I think I would have gone with Moises Caicedo, because I thought he did well to impose himself in that midfield, and that gave Chelsea all the majority of possession that they had throughout the game, if you were to look at those respective statistics. And according to live score, the overall ball possession for Chelsea was up to 66%, while 34% there for Real Betis. Shots on target, Chelsea ended with 7, and you can see in sheer comparison it was only 3 for Real Betis. And then off target, Real Betis had 5 shots and only 1 for Chelsea, 4 blocked shots for Real Betis and 3 for Chelsea. So really, when you look at those kinds of statistics, really they tell you the kind of game that we did have. Again, in the second half, Antony sort of struggled to get his footing in the game. He could not find the pace and power to shoot really from both close and distant range. Chelsea defended really well. Their chances, Real Betis' chances in the second half were quite limited, and that kind of thing. So really, quite Chelsea cruising to an impressive 4-1 victory. So, and on that note, therefore, I say give Chelsea their flowers. They are the European kings in London. You cannot contest that. They've won it all. The UEFA Cup, they've won that, I think, on 2 occasions. They've won the UEFA Europa League twice, 2013 and 2019. They've won the UEFA Champions League twice, 2012 and 2021. They've won the UEFA Conference League now, 2025. I mean, you cannot contest that. They've won the FIFA Club World Cup. They won the UEFA Super Cup. Just, I think, in 2021 as well, really. So you cannot really argue with that. They've done it all. They've really done it all. And I do not think anybody will be out to contest that fact. Arsenal fans, please, let's take our chill pill, let's take our bitter pill, let's swallow our pride and acknowledge that Chelsea are the giants in Europe as far as London is concerned. There's no debate to that. So really, so for me, that sort of, for me, it puts, actually, it was never debate in the first place. I've always acknowledged that Chelsea are a better team than Arsenal when it comes to European football. It's just what it is. The pedigree speaks for themselves, for itself. The kind of pieces of silverware that they have speaks for itself, really, right there. Of course, we can go on and I've seen people trying to do the comparison or to make the argument, oh, this is a lesser competition. Now, it is a lesser competition because it's what they qualified for. You can only win competitions while you're featuring in. And that's why I did not want to stand anything to do with the argument regarding Arsenal and Europa League, as well as this kind of argument between Arsenal and UEFA Conference League. They were not in that competition for purposes of comparison for those that are trying to bring Arsenal in the conversation. Not that it should be anyway. We can go into the conversation that Newcastle were the better team. They went on to win the Carabao Cup. They beat Arsenal home and away in the semi-finals to reach the finals and win that. Even in the final, they beat Liverpool. So arguably the best team. We can talk about the FA Cup. Arsenal lost to Manchester United on penalties. Martin Odegaard missing a penalty in that game that was saved by Altay Bendia. Really, so we can talk about that. Of course, they lost the Premier League title to Liverpool. They never did really compete with Liverpool. Liverpool were by far the better team all season throughout. We can have that debate. We can have the debate about the UEFA Champions League, which I thought was one down to basically two or three things. One, the inexperience of the manager. For me, that was one, and it did show in certain instances. Two, the lack of a striker. I think that trumps everything else. Arsenal showed they lacked a striker. It's a conversation we've had all season. It's a conversation we had since last summer. So that also in itself is not up for debate. So really, we can talk about those debates. But for the debates where Arsenal were not in the competition, I do not think we should be even entertaining them. Now, again, I saw another debate when they were heaping praises to Chelsea, and they were saying, oh, because they've won all UEFA competitions, something that Real Madrid, Barcelona have not done is Barcelona and Real Madrid do not want to be anywhere near the competitions. They do not want anything to do with the UEFA Conference League. They do not want to hear the stink of the UEFA Europa League. I mean, Barcelona dreaded being in that competition because they know that's not where they belong. They belong to the elite competition, which is the UEFA Champions League. So let's not entertain that nonsensical debate of, oh, Chelsea are now, better than all the historicals. They're better than Man United in Europe. They're better than Real Madrid or Barcelona. I mean, like I said, you can only win a competition in which you are. And by the way, if you want to know how big teams detest competitions lesser than the UEFA Champions League, look at the kind of motivation with which they play in them, especially at the lower stages of the competition. But also, more importantly, remember they celebrate qualifying for UEFA Champions League more than winning any of these titles. Of course, that is also subject to debate. But have you ever imagined Real Madrid finishing outside the top four in the Spanish La Liga and that they are not qualifying for UEFA Champions League football? Just imagine that. Of course, we've had Chelsea in years gone by be out of the UEFA competitions, be out of the UEFA Europa League, UEFA Champions League. They've been out of it on a couple of occasions. So we've seen that. Man United are facing the same, sort of threat. Arsenal have had a taste of that. Remember, in their years of downfall, they collapsed to the UEFA Europa League, and Arsene Wenger dreaded it. That I think it was 2018-2017 when they lost to Atletico Madrid in the semi-finals. Arsene Wenger dreaded the competition, even though his team had to play there. You get. Then when Arsenal won the FA Cup in 2020, they had to go and play in the UEFA Europa League because then they had finished 8th on the Premier League table. Again, Mikel Arteta just embraced it for the purposes that they were in the competition. Of course, he would have loved to go on to win it, but by all measures and standards, he knows that the goal is to be in the UEFA Champions League every season, in and out. That's why Arsene Wenger was appraised for taking Arsenal to the UEFA Champions League as consecutively as he had been in that role until in his later years of his tenure at Arsenal. So Arsenal were in the UEFA Europa League for, I think, 2020, 2021, yes, that season. And we all remember they got knocked out by Sporting Lisbon, Takahiro Tomiyasu and William Saliba suffering injuries as a result of those games. Again, we dreaded the competition because of the kind of damage it did to this Arsenal squad. And, we resulted out of that and that kind of thing. So then come 2022, 2023 season, because even for the 2021-2022, Arsenal still qualified for Europa League with the 5th place finish on the Premier League table. Again, all Arsenal fans, I'm sure, were pissed, were mad because they had failed, they had capitulated on their pursuit of finishing within the top four to qualify for the UEFA Champions League, because that's the ultimate goal. That's the ultimate goal. But nonetheless, I will maintain, give Chelsea their flowers. They deserved it. They are champions. They know how to win a final, and they just did. They just humiliated Real Betis, especially in that second half. So we will keep that debate at that. Congratulations to you, Chelsea. Congratulations to you, all Chelsea fans, Anthony Agaba, and every other Chelsea fan out there, Kunasa, etc. All I want to say is congratulations to you upon your triumph. But let's not have the debate of, oh, you're suddenly better than Man United, you're suddenly better than Real Madrid or Barcelona just because you won it all. No, they don't want to be in the conference. They do not want to be in the Europa League. Because, again, to give you context, just a little bit briefly, is that for those of you that ought to remember, in 2013, when Chelsea went on to win the UEFA Europa League, they had crashed out of the UEFA Champions League. Remember, they won it in 2012. So after winning it, the following season, they crashed out at the group stages. And that's how they slipped down, because they finished third. Now, that's how they slipped down to the UEFA Europa League. And then they went on to win. They went on to win it. So that's how they found themselves in that situation, and it wasn't ideal. It wasn't ideal, but they knew they had to go and play there. In fact, again, Roberto Di Matteo guided Chelsea to the triumph of the UEFA Champions League in 2012, given a 2-year contract, didn't finish even the first year, and he got sacked. When he got sacked by Chelsea, that's how they brought in Rafa Benitez as the interim. When they bring him as the interim, he then guides them to the triumph of the UEFA Europa League. But it was it wasn't because that, oh, Chelsea had sort of only qualified for the Europa League, so they went all out and won the competition. No, that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case, really, for those of you that do remember. In that year, 2012-2013, Chelsea were in Group E of the UEFA Champions League. They were with Juventus, they were with Shakhtar Donetsk, and then there was a club, I think, from one of the Scandinavian regions, countries called Nordsjælland, something like that. Nordsjælland, something like that. So they finished third with 10 points, equivalent to the second place Shakhtar Donetsk. But when it came to I think head-to-head, yeah, something like that, Shakhtar were the better side because they had scored 12 goals and Chelsea had scored 16. Chelsea had conceded at 10, Shakhtar had conceded 8. So the goal difference was Shakhtar had 4, Chelsea had 6. But head-to-head, I think Shakhtar were better, so Chelsea ended third. And that's how they slid down to the UEFA Europa League. And then they ended up winning it. But let's not try and as if to suggest that, oh, they had intended to be there and then they eventually won. But like I said, you only win competitions in which you're participating. So allow me end my sort of rambling about that there. And let's move on to now. Thierry Henry has caused the stir in among the Arsenal fan base for some of the comments that he made while appearing on a podcast of The Overlap. He was on there with Ian Wright, Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher, Roy Keane, and another lady whose name I certainly do not know. So he was appearing on The Overlap, and then they got to talk about Arsenal, a team that he loves. He said this over again, regardless of where he's played, at Monaco, Juventus, Barcelona, in the Major League Soccer with New York Red Bulls, it's always Arsenal for him. Everything else comes second to Arsenal. That's the team he supports. That's the team he loves. That's the team he means well for. That's the team that he celebrates when they win, and feels aggrieved when they lose. So he was appearing on the Overlap podcast, and he said, the last 3 years, we have been in a situation where we should at least bring a cup to the club or be in a final. Man United played 5 finals in the last 5 years. The United that everyone laughs at. In the last 3 years of building, Arsenal didn't reach a final. That's just a statement of fact. It's not up for debate. And for me, that is where I want to agree with him. He goes on to say, this year we did not compete with Liverpool. Okay, that's what I just said. 100%, I agree. Liverpool were miles ahead from the moment they went on top. Really. When they squandered a point or two here, Arsenal squandered more points on the other end. So he says, this year we didn't compete with Liverpool. I don't know what people think, but we did not compete, not worse. I'm not saying this season was a disappointment, but it's normal that people are raising questions now about what the team is doing. Okay. We've been here before and spoken about the amount of pressure that is going to be on Mikel Arteta's shoulders come next season. Why? Because he is expected to win. Because he's now built over time. He's expected to win. Now, regardless of what you may think of other competitions, lesser or not, be it the Carabao Cup, be it the FA Cup, we have not won. It's just the truth. We have no piece of silverware. And while Manchester United, amidst all their struggles of building one project after the other, build and break, they've been able to get pieces of silverware, and that's something we've spoken about. We spoke about in the build-up to the final of the UEFA Europa League. That amidst all their struggles, ever since the departure of Sir Alex Ferguson, somehow they've been getting there. Now, of course, in the grand scheme of building a winning team that goes on to challenge for major titles, they've fallen short on that on numerous occasions. But in terms of maintaining that winning spirit, that winning mentality in the team has always been there. 2016 FA Cup, they beat Crystal Palace 2-1 in the finals. Jason Panchon scoring in the final there. for Crystal Palace, and then Juan Mata and Jesse Lingard scoring for Manchester United. They win the FA Cup 2017, a cup double, Carabao Cup under Jose Mourinho, beating Southampton 3-2. Then they win the UEFA Europa League, beating Ajax in the final. 2018, nowhere to be seen. I think 2019, I think 2019, I do not remember exactly where they were, but they were in the mix of something. And then 2021, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer takes them to the finals of the UEFA Conference League. Sorry, of the UEFA Europa League, and they lose to Villarreal 11-10 on penalties, you know. So they are in the conversation. Remember 2023, when they won the Carabao Cup, they lost to Man City in the same year in the finals of the FA Cup by 2-1. But then came back the subsequent year, 2024, and won. 2025, they win a final of the UEFA Europa League. Again, regardless of what you think of the competitions, of what level they do hold with that respect, they have been in the final. 2018, they lost to Chelsea in the finals of the FA Cup by 0-0, that goal by Eden Hazard. So really, you can see what Thierry Henry is trying to allude to. He's saying, while we are building this team that we think is going to go on and win major titles, we should be able to pick up on cup competitions. We should be able to scoop an FA Cup, to scoop a Carabao Cup. Again, you remember there's that season when Liverpool were chasing, was it the quadruple? And then, of course, they failed to win the Premier League, but they finished with the FA Cup. They finished with the Carabao Cup. You get it? Again, just last season, they beat Chelsea in the finals to win the Carabao Cup. So, really, for a team that wants to win, you have to create that winning mentality. Again, Jurgen Klopp, once he wins the Champions League in 2019, he goes on to win the Premier League in 2020. He goes on to win the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup last season, and now they've won the league. There's that winning mentality, that culture that is being built by picking up on those trophies. Because remember, success is contagious. The more you win, the more you want to win. If you win the small cup, next season you want to win the bigger cup. That's just how success works. So I do agree with Thierry Henry that Arsenal ought to have done better, even within this building process. And when you look, how many finals have Arsenal played ever since Arsene Wenger left? Because I think in 2017 they lost the finals of 2017 they won the FA Cup, they beat Chelsea. Then 2018 I think they lost to City. Then 2019 they got beat by Chelsea, they were in the final. That was Unai Emery. Then 2020 they won the FA Cup. And yeah, that's the last final they played. 2020 FA Cup final, beating Chelsea in the final. That's it. I do not remember any other final. All the others have been near misses. So, in that kind of respect. So, for Arsenal fans out there giving Thierry Henry the stick, it's just a fun, just as much as you. The only difference is that club legend, he played for the club and delivered for it what he was able to deliver, both as an individual but also as part of a bigger team. So for me, I did not see nothing wrong with what he said. However, let's move on to a bogus debate about Arsenal that I stumbled upon, and this was by a team of panelists on ESPN. Now, of course, it pertained the news that Arsenal are close to completing a deal to sign Martin Zubimendi and for 60 million euros. And somebody questioned, why are Arsenal spending 60 million euros on Martin Zubimendi when the entire world knows that they need a striker? That's true. Arsenal need a striker. But like I said, I've made this argument before. It won't matter if Arsenal buy the most elite striker out there and do not fix other issues within the squad. Again, this is not a school tournament of 1 month where you can play with a squad of 13, 14 players. It's a whole marathon throughout the season. You're going to play 60 plus games. You get. So it's not about you having, oh, I have my solid 11, I have a couple of substitutes on here, and then, yeah, but we're going to win it. The teams that go on to win it, one of the biggest strengths is squad depth. The ability to rotate players when they need to. The ability to give players a rest. The ability to sustain the competitiveness, the winning streak, even when they have major injuries within that squad. Look at Man City. Over the last 2 seasons, when they won the Premier League before this season, Kevin De Bruyne was getting injured, but they still soldiered on. They remain competitive. They remain winning games until he rejoined them. Let's not forget, Brought Erling Haaland missed a couple of games in between, and when he returned, the team was still winning. That's what happened to Barcelona. There's a time they were without Lewandowski, but they continued to win because they had options in the team. We've seen that time and again. You need to have a stronger team. So yes, Arsenal need a striker, but he's not the only player they need. Again, I'll say this. If Arsenal go out buy a striker, let's show them all in, buy a striker, and then go into the season with the same squad they've had this season, they still won't win nothing. They won't win the Premier League title. Why? Because you're one injury away from disrupting the entire team. One injury away, and suddenly everything goes bonkers. Thomas Partey is out, Declan Rice is out, Martin Odegaard is out, and then suddenly your creativity is gone under the drain. Bukayo Saka is out, and then you're struggling on that right wing simply because you do not have a potent replacement, a replacement just as good or even half as good. So I understand people who say that yes, Arsenal need a striker as soon as yesterday. We've had that debate since last season, not even a debate. Everybody knows it. And for me, if this were last summer and we're having the debate over who to sign between Mikel Merino and the striker, obviously I wasn't happy. We needed the striker. I didn't understand why we're so much focused on signing Mikel Merino. And in fact, there's speculation that it's part of the reason as to why Edu Gadspadau left. That eventually we ended up signing Raheem Sterling when the club refused to commit finances to getting a striker, when he thought we really needed one to push us to the next level, which was winning a piece of silverware, having finished second for 2 consecutive seasons, and that kind of thing. So, but that's a whole different story. Okay, that was last summer. If that conversation was coming last summer, I could agree. As for us, we lost Jorginho, who has bid farewell to this team. And regardless of your opinion about Jorginho, he was an integral part of this team. He gave you the body, not just the body, but the experience. Whenever you missed Thomas Partey, whenever you needed somebody to play alongside Declan Rice or anything, whenever you needed to see out a game, remember, you're going to play a game, you're leading by 2-1 or by 1-0, and you need to put in players that can help you with the game management and see out the game. So it's not about the goal scorer. And again, if those people had watched Thierry Comments' episode with overlap, here's something that I found crucial that he said. He said, usually the goal scorer gets all the praises, but they forget the guy that won the ball back in the first place. They forget the guy that floated in the good cross or made that final sweet pass, and we focus on the goal scorer. But this guy is just putting the icing on the cake. Yes, he got the goal, but there's somebody that has done a very good job on the other end. So it's similar to that. You need players that are going to make sure everything behind the striker are clicky. You get, and then to get you across that line. So we will have this debate. We will continue to have this debate. But for me, the nonsense that Arsenal do not need any other player other than a striker is nonsensical. Do Arsenal need a striker? Without a question. Do they need other players? Many more other players. They need a right winger. They need a creative midfielder. They needed a holding midfielder or a central midfielder to replace Jorginho, because you need squad depth. Kian is leaving. Zinchenko is possibly leaving. They will need a left back. So should we argue yes, a left back is not priority, but they will need one after those departures. We all know that they need a number two goalkeeper. Go into next season with David as your number one and Tommy Setford as your number two, and have David Wire get injured, God forbid, and see how Tommy Setford fares with you for the remainder of the season. He will be under enormous pressure because he's only a 19-year-old. So you need the squad depth. You need all those players. So it's not just about it's not a given that once you get a striker, then everything will pass. Again, you remember when Arsenal signed Mesut Ozil 2013? You remember when Arsenal signed Mesut Ozil in 2013? Again, we knew we needed a better striker than Olivier Giroud. Arsene Wenger seemed to disagree or refuse to purchase one. Ozil did it all in terms of creativity, providing the assists, but the conversion rate was poor on the other side, so Arsenal could not win. You get. This season, we struggled due to the absence of Martin Odegaard for those 2 months with his ankle injury. And even when he returned, he wasn't at the best of his game, and we're giving him all the stick because we lacked a replacement for him. Just imagine if Arsenal had pound for pound a good replacement for Martin Odegaard. We wouldn't be thinking about his lack of form or his underperformances and that kind of thing. But we are able to level that kind of pressure because we do not have the options in the squad. You get. We do not have the options. Liverpool gets injured and people forget he's part of that team. Why? Because Luis Diaz are getting the job done. Because they are getting the job done. When Cody Gakpo is out injured and Jetta is back, Cody Gakpo is part of that team. You forget that Darwin Núñez misses lots of chances in that team. How many games did Liverpool start without Alexis McAllister or Dominic Szoboszlai just because the manager chose to rotate the team a bit and give Harvey Elliott a chance, to give Tsimikas a chance to start, to give Wataru Endo, a sniff in a game. So we've all had that. So teams need options. So anyways, I'll leave that debate at that and move on. Somebody sent me a message to say I should talk about Chelsea's title winning side last night. I guess they missed the first 30 minutes of this podcast or thereabout, because we're talking about Chelsea for the first 30 minutes. Maybe they missed that part. But like I said, and maybe for purposes of repetition, simply give Chelsea their flowers. They're the biggest, baddest team in London in as far as European football is concerned. They've won it all. UEFA Champions League twice, 2012, 2021. UEFA Europa League 2013, 2019. Done. And the UEFA Conference League. Icing on the cake. That is what you could call it. UEFA Super Cup, done. They've won that, I think twice. FIFA Club World Cup, they've won. So that is not up for debate. Chelsea have been a powerhouse as far as European football is concerned. The only time they lost a UEFA Champions League final was against a fellow English side in Manchester United in 2008, Moscow, losing out on penalties. We all remember that John Terry sleeve, during his penalty take. So, but what I will not entertain, even when I do honestly deserve their flowers, is the argument at any level whatsoever that because they've won all UEFA competitions, then suddenly we should give them bigger praises than the likes of Barcelona, than the likes of Real Madrid, just because they've won them all. Like I said in my argument, you can only win the competitions in which you play. And Real Madrid, Barcelona do not want anything to hear about the Conference League, the Europa League. They do not even want to know those competitions exist. Barcelona just a couple of years ago slid in the Europa League, and they dreaded being there because they know that's not where they belong. Chelsea this season were desperate to get back into the UEFA Champions League because they know that's where they belong, because they know that's the elite competition, because they know that's where the financial value is. You get. In that game against Nottingham Forest, once they went a goal up thanks to Levi Colwill in the 50th minute, what was the objective? Keep this lead. Do not concede. Qualify for UEFA Champions League. That was the ultimate goal. Let me ask you, Chelsea fans, if you have to choose between winning the UEFA Conference League and qualify for Europa League next season, versus finishing in the top 4, qualify for the UEFA Champions League, but not win the UEFA Conference League, which of the two would you choose? I have a good feeling that majority of you would choose qualifying for the UEFA Champions League over winning the Conference League, if that is what it meant. That's what the sacrifice would be. I guarantee that most of you would choose qualifying for UEFA Champions League, because you know, if you regard yourself as a big team, that's where you belong. The UEFA Champions League, that's where you want to be playing, season in, season out, competing with the big boys, competing with the Barcelonas, Real Madrid, England, PSG, Arsenal, Man United are dead in the water at this point. But let's not discount their pedigree in the competition. Bayern, that's where you want to be. Borussia Dortmund, you want to be a regular in the competition. How many times have we had the story of the race for the top 4? Why? Because it means UEFA Champions League football. For the minute you realize that you're out of the title race, the goal becomes qualify for Champions League and then live to fight on another day. And that's why these other domestic cup competitions become so important for these teams. That, okay, I failed to win the league. The number one objective is to qualify for the UEFA Champions League, finish that's in the top 4 or top 5 as it was this case this season. And then the other is try and see if you can win a piece of silverware in these domestic cups. Newcastle went for that. They won the Carabao Cup. As soon as they got that job done, they were guaranteed a place in Europe by the virtue of the fact that they had won the Carabao Cup. But because they know they wanted UEFA Champions League to take their project to the next level, to keep some of their best players in Alexander Isak, Bruno Guimaraes, Steven Botman, Nick Pope, and all the others, Anthony Gordon, they know that the ultimate goal is getting back in the UEFA Champions League. Last season, but one, after this season, but just the other season, Newcastle were playing in the UEFA Champions League, and they were beating up against teams like AC Milan and PSG at home. St. James's Park was buzzing. Fans love that. They need that. They know their fans need that. But more importantly, they know the financial value that comes with that. The goal is to be in the UEFA Champions League. Let's not lose sight of that, because it's the elite competition. You know, because it's the elite competition. And that's where the conversation will always be. So, Mr. Leo says, history all day, sorry. Trying to understand, to make sense of your comments, Mr. Leo, but it's good to have you back, Mr. Leo, once again with us. Hi, sorry, I live all day, sorry. It's understandable, Mr. Leo. Sometimes I get from here in the midst of people's schedules at work. Those that can afford to have their earpieces on while in their respective jobs, do stay with us for the period that they can stay with us. But much appreciated for the love and support. So for me, that's the gist of the conversation. That's the debate. That elite teams belong at that stage. They want to win the UEFA Champions League, but you can only win competitions in which you're playing. And it's Chelsea do deserve their flowers that they won't win the competition. That's the UEFA Conference League. The beauty of it is that they've done it with a very, very young team. And again, because when you look at this team, I think they average about 24 years. Is it Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, Cole Palmer, Malo Gusto? All these are youngsters that you have in this team. Jordan Sancho, not all, Philip Atkinson. I mean, this is a component of young players. Levi Colwill, Wesley Fofana. We're talking about players that do not have that, a depth of experience at this level. That's what you're looking at. That's the team you're talking about. Because we're not talking about the Lampards, the Terrys, the Siens. That's not. We're looking at a very young Chelsea team that has been built over the last 3 years with they've had to go through, different managers. First with Thomas Tuchel, Frank Lampard, what's his name, Graham Potter in there, Mauricio Pochettino last season, and now it is Enzo Maresca. So we do appreciate all that context. So for me, with that context of it being a young team, having gone through different managers, it's Enzo Maresca's debut season. He, up until yesterday, he did not want a piece of silver, but of course we know what he did with Leicester City in the championship, last year. But with that context of the kind of pressure that is on Enzo Maresca's shoulders, one to change the style in which they play, to play entertaining football, but more importantly, to get them competitive. Guys, let's not forget that by around December, we are having Chelsea in the conversation of part of being the, in the title race as far as the Premier League was concerned. They were part of that debate. And then suddenly, after I think that loss to Fulham, they sort of slipped away. They had their dip in form, things sort of fell apart. But we had started entertaining those thoughts. Whether you agreed with the debate or not, the table showed otherwise, because they were within second, third. That's where they were averaging, because they were right up there. And Enzo Maresca kept on telling us, guys, do not put us in that conversation because I know we're not ready. And like I said, the season is a marathon. Length of time proved that we were not ready to compete for the league. Because once, you remember, Madueke had a brilliant start to a season, including, I think he scored a hat-trick. He scored a hat-trick. You remember Cole Palmer against Wolves, So once, and yet we are talking about the same season in which Cole Palmer went about 18 games without seeing the back of the net, and yet he's possibly the top scorer this season, about 15 goals in the Premier League and about 8 assists. Let's not forget that. Nicholas Jackson, about, I think, 18 goal involvement across all competitions. So let's not forget that, and that the league or the season is in itself a marathon. You need to stay in it, and if you cannot keep up, that's where you fall off. In any way, I wouldn't give Chelsea stick for what they've been able to achieve this season. I think if you were Chelsea coming into this season, the ultimate goal was to achieve Champions League football. That's a box tick. Win the UEFA Conference League, because I thought you were the biggest team in the competition. That has been ticked as well. So really, they've simply ticked off the boxes that we did expect them to tick off at the start of the season. Of course, at some point, it felt like UEFA Champions League slot was slipping away. But somehow, somewhere, they managed to get everything back on track. And they got themselves back into that conversation, and eventually they qualified. So really, for me, that's what is important, that they've managed to tick their own boxes and achieved the ultimate objective in as far as what this season was going to be. Going into next season, I'm sure the objectives are going to be different. One, for starters, their primary objective is going to go back in the market and buy, of course, as many players as they can afford to buy, but more importantly, to try and strengthen in the positions where they think they are weak. And one of those positions where they think they are being underperforming is in the centre back. They do need a centre back, and that's why they're looking at players like, they are looking to sign Dean Howson. They are looking at Mark Behe as, a centre back they can bring in to help Levi Colwill to play with Wesley Fofana, who we all know is injury prone. So they are looking for that piece of the puzzle. In terms of left back, I think Marco Koya is good, and all the other substitutes they have within their ranks. Right back, Richard James struggles with so many injuries, but part of, again, the solutions they need to find is moving on all the players that in longer need. The likes of Ben Chilwell, I think Trevor Chalobah should be in the same breadth. Axel Disasi, Bejad Petrovic, that's the goalkeeper that is on loan to Strasbourg. We were speaking about him last night. They do have a midfielder in Andre Santos, has really done well at Strasbourg. I think they need to bring him back to be a good substitute to maybe Enzo Fernandez or even Cole Palmer. Then they are interested in getting a striker, and they are leaving the rest to sign Liam Delap from Ipswich Town for only £30 million, because that's his release clause. But they're also engaged in the conversation for Hugo Ekitike, Victor Gyökeres, and Benjamin Sesko. So they are looking for that other support striker or number one target man to, so that all the stress of being the striker at Chelsea is not on the shoulders of Nicholas Jackson, who, by the way, he himself, until that game against Newcastle, or slightly before, I think until the game against Everton, in which he scored as they won by 1-0, had been out through injury. You get, so they need that other striker. So there's a couple of things they need to fix. They've already bought a holding midfielder in Esugo, who they did sign for. Dario Esugo, who they signed from Las Palmas, but left him there on loan until the end of the season. Dario Esugo for about £18.4 million from Las Palmas. Let's not forget they beat Manchester United to the signing of Giovanni Quenda. That's the 17-year-old at Sporting Lisbon. So they've already started making their moves in the market. They're looking to fix those things, and they will be moving on a large chunk of players, the likes of Jordan Sancho, Christopher Nkunku, Raheem Sterling. They're going to be looking to put out a lot of deadwood out of that Chelsea squad, and then be ready for next season, where possibly, I do think the objective is going to be now compete for the Premier League. You may not win it, but at least compete. That would be the thing, and perhaps finish at least maybe third or second place next season. That should be the objective, because you've made this step forward. Whether they will achieve it, that's a whole different story, but at least that will be the objective going into next season. Anyways, guys, allow me, but by the way, they did pay quite expensively, up to a fee in the region of £62.4 million for Giovanni Quenda. That's the 17-year-old, highly rated. Manchester United were really eagerly wanted to get him, but Chelsea beat them to the punch, because Ruben Amorim is a player known to him so well, and I think they sort of looked at him as a Cristiano Ronaldo that they picked from Sporting Lisbon as the new Cristiano Ronaldo. Anyways, let's move on and speak matters of transfer speculation. But guys, do not forget to subscribe to the channel. If you're new here, also like this broadcast. But before we get into the transfer gossip and speculation, I want to bring you to the know that if you want to learn digital skills like coding, web design, cybersecurity, these are skills that are on a very high demand on the global market. Do not forget to check out Ebo State. They are based in Kasanga, Kampala, Uganda, offering both in-person and online digital skills training sessions, as well as career guidance, and help you find jobs in the dynamic digital space after your training. They are giving you a 5% discount on enrollment between this period. So do check them out. I'll leave their link down in the description of this broadcast so that you can check them out. Anyways, let's move on to the transfer gossip. But again, we will be back at 10 p.m. Tonight to discuss or digest the transfers and things in that respect, all the debate, raging debate, what players, what clubs are, looking to sign and etc. But as of this morning, this is the transfer gossip. Of course, we all know about, the conversations going on with Liverpool in regards to their pursuance for Florian Wirtz. So this is a report from AS in Spanish. Says Real Madrid are pushing to sign Bayer Leverkusen winger Florian Wirtz, and now his former boss Xabi Alonso has been unveiled as a new manager at the Los Blancos, despite the 22-year-old international being strongly tipped to join Liverpool. Now, I find this story a bit more wishful as rather than a factual, because Florian Wirtz has already given Liverpool the green light that he would like to join them. He snapped Bayern Munich to choose Liverpool. Man City were interested earlier on at the start of the window. They pulled out because they thought the player was being overvalued, valued at about 130 to up to 150 million euros. Then never mind what else it costs within agent fees and maybe sign bonuses for the player. So they deemed the deal too expensive and they pulled out. So to bring Real Madrid at this stage in the conversation is not far-fetched in itself, but I think it's primarily because of the link that exists between Xabi Alonso and his former player, because that's where Xabi Alonso just left at Bayer Leverkusen. So that's what I think about that. Then Newcastle are ready to make their first move in the crucial summer with bids for Crystal Palace and England defender Mark Gay, and Brentford is 25-year-old Cameroon forward Brian Mbeumo. I think we've spoken about these leagues before, especially with Brian Mbeumo as well as Mark Gay. But like I said, Chelsea are also interested. When it comes to Brian Mbeumo, Man United, Arsenal are reported to be interested in the same player, so there will be that competition from that. Now that Man United could potentially lose Liam Delap to Chelsea, we'll wait to see where they turn their attention to, because most of the players that they are pointing to, especially when they are competing for them with teams that are in Europe, those teams seem to have the upper hand, because Manchester United does not have European football next season. So it sort of puts them in number 2 in terms of, these negotiations. And that's why they had to be quick for Matthias Cunha, because they didn't want anybody to come swoop in at the last minute and, tempt the player into moving away. That's the 26-year-old Brazilian international. Anyways, Brentford have also approached Liverpool for Republic of Ireland goalkeeper. That's Kelleher, Comehin Kelleher. Yes, valued at about £20 million. And that's because Liverpool have already signed a second goalkeeper in Georgi Mamadashvili from Sevilla. That's the 24-year-old Georgian international. So they signed him and he stayed with Sevilla on loan, and now he's joining Liverpool. So they will need to move on Kelleher, and that is because Mark Flecken, the number 1 goalkeeper at Brentford, is also being targeted by, I think, is it Bayer Leverkusen that are keen on signing him? So there's that. And then you do have yes, Bayer Leverkusen are the ones interested in signing Mark Flecken. So, and I've always spoken about highly of him, because he's a player that I really think he's arguably the second best goalkeeper in the Premier League. That was before Matt Sells put on quite the show this season. Anyways, Bayern Munich are interested in Cody Gakpo. We've spoken about that story extensively. Liverpool continuing their negotiations with Bournemouth over Milos Kakes. We've had that discussion. Barcelona having discussions with representatives of Marcus Rashford to see if they can lure him to the Camp Nou next season. They're really interested. The player does want to make the move to Barcelona. But Barcelona also on their list for a winger, they do have Liverpool's Luis Diaz. So that's the 28-year Colombian international. They do have him on their list. And should things fail out with Marcus Rashford, because Manchester United want up to £40 million to sign the England internationals. So should things fail in that respect, then he could make the switch there. Then there are some reports linking Leroy Sané with the potential to Arsenal, but then again, I find this not far-fetched, but a link between Mikel Arteta and Leroy Sané, both having been at Man City. Having seen what Raheem Sterling has delivered at Arsenal this season, I do not want to entertain these kinds of thoughts. I'm sorry to say, but not to say that Leroy Sané is a bad player, but he's not the Leroy Sané that we did watch at Man City a couple of years ago. If I had to choose between Leroy Sané and Jamal Musiala or what's his name, Michael Olise, I'll take Michael Olise any day. So really, that's how I do no longer rate him. He could may as well go to the Italian Serie A. I think he would really thrive there. Then of course, Newcastle, Everton, all being in the conversation of Liam Delap, but like I said, Chelsea are now leading the rest because, Enzo Maresca knows the player because he started out at the Man City Academy, and we all know Maresca was there, so he does love the player. Then Arsenal have been told by RB Leipzig that they must pay up to £92.5 million for the Slovenian striker in Benjamin Sesko. Then reports are Manchester United are also interested. The reports themselves are not far-fetched, but it begs the question that given Manchester United's financial predicament of whether they can make an outlay of up to £90 million for a player like Benjamin Sesko. Then England, a midfielder, that's Jordan Henderson, has been linked with a potential return to Sunderland. For those of you that forget, he was at Sunderland before joining Liverpool. And from Liverpool, then he went to Al Ittihad, where it didn't work out. And then he joined Ajax. And that he's been at Ajax ever since. Then Italian champions, that's Napoli, are sort of on the verge of completing the signings of Kevin De Bruyne as a free agent from Manchester City, and then Jonathan David, that's the 25-year-old Canadian striker who is leaving Lille as a free agent at the end of his contract. So he's leaving Lille, and he's done really well. 16 goals in the league, a couple of assists is not a bad return there. And then Roma are on the verge of appointing Piero Gasperini as their new head coach after the Italian left Atalanta following 9 years in charge. He did win them the UEFA Europa League last season when they beat up against Bayer Leverkusen by 3-0 in the final. A hat-trick there at the Moral Lookman. Now, here's what is happening in as far as the Italian Serie A is concerned. The other day, on Tuesday, before Napoli players and their, managing coaching team met the Pope, that's Pope Leo the 14th, because they met him on Tuesday in Naples at the Vatican. Before they met him, there were reports that Antonio Conte could leave Napoli, and that Napoli were lining up to replace him with Maximiliano Allegri as high on that list. Now, in the aftermath of that meeting, Antonio Conte held a meeting with the Napoli president, Laurentiis, and according to reports, those talks were positive, and there are high chances, or Napoli are increasingly growing confident that Antonio Conte will stay. But of course, there's more subsequent meetings in regards before a final decision is made. So if Antonio Conte stays with Napoli, then that means Allegri will no longer be in the conversation. Now, because he's sort of fallen down in that conversation, he's now being linked with a potential move to AC Milan. That's Massimiliano Allegri. AC Milan, remember, are parting ways with Sergio Conceição. That's the former FC Porto manager. So because they're falling out with Sergio Conceição, and they finished 8th on the Italian Serie A this season. So they're looking at Massimiliano Allegri as their new manager to take them forward. That's AC Milan, and possibly get them back to the level where they think they belong. Let's not forget, I think 2 seasons ago, before this one, they won the Scudetto with Stefano Pioli, and then Napoli won it, and then Inter won it, and then Napoli have reclaimed it. Then still in Italian football, Piero Gasperini has agreed to leave Atlanta after 9 years. So when he becomes jobless, that's why you're having Roma with a link to Piero Gasperini, who I think would be really, really a good manager for them. Earlier on, we had links, stories linking Jurgen Klopp with the vacant job at AC Roma, and he called those reports, and he called them bullshit. Those were the words of Jurgen Klopp. He said he wasn't joining Roma and he doesn't know what motivates those stories. He told Liverpool fans not to believe them while he was appearing at the auctioning of an Alexander Trent-Arnold jersey. And so now that is out of the film, because remember, Roma were under the charges of Claudio Ranieri, who they pulled out of retirement to sort of help them see out the season, and he did tremendously well. As far as last season is concerned. So I think they finished about 6th on the table. That's Roma. They finished 5th on the table and qualified for UEFA Europa League football. Of course, they were in the Europa League this season and got knocked out by Atletico Bilbao, I think at the quarterfinals or anyways. So he helped them finish in 5th place, and of course he had to retire, to go back to retirement. That's Claudio Ranieri, and now that's why they are turning their attention to Piero Gasperini. So there you have it, guys. It's been a pleasure having you this morning. Do not forget to join us on a weekly basis between 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. We do come live every single day to bring you the latest of sporting news in as far as football is concerned, especially the Premier League transfers and everything from some of the major European leagues. So keep it locked on the Footballtribeug channel and brace yourselves for more news. Then still every single day of the week, provided there are no big games, we usually come between 10:30 to 11 or 10 p.m. We're trying to do it at 10 p.m. To try and bring it closer, especially for our community members from India who are 2 hours ahead of us. So we're trying to find a more suitable time, but usually at around 10 p.m. We do come back on here for another live broadcast and discuss all matters sport. So this we will be discussing majority transfers in the night because that's what making the news. What players do I think are suitable for your team? You give me your feedback. What players you think your team should be signing? Where do they need to improve? We usually have that debate and engagement, and give us your view, many of your questions, and that kind of thing. So apologies for the internet glitch. So between 10 to 11 and onwards, we always come to you live. So join us tonight and let's engage later. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you to all our new community members, our new subscribers. Thank you for the love and support. To those that do watch our broadcast later after the live is done, we do not take your time for granted. It's always a pleasure having you support us through watching our content. Have a blessed day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.